You read the title already, and at this point you're probably thinking I'm crazy and waiting for me to explain myself. Well, first and foremost, this video contains spoilers for episode 9. With that out the way, like Caine said,
let's not waste any time! Let's get right into the show!
So what is the plot of the Amazing Digital Circus? It's about a group of people who put on a headset and are now trapped inside of a digital world that looks like a circus, where the ringmaster is an AI called Caine, who makes adventures for them to go on. And the purpose is to keep their minds occupied so they don't go insane and abstract. Except, a very big problem that is immediately told to us in the first episode is that, well, the humans don't actually want to go on Caine's adventures. In fact, what they want is to leave the circus. This is like life under capitalism. How society expects everyone to work a job even if their job doesn't actually accomplish anything. And although most people don't actually enjoy their jobs, they are still forced to work, because otherwise, they can't earn money and starve to death. In the Amazing Digital Circus, the alternative to going on adventures is abstraction, which is basically its version of death. Can you see the resemblance now? Alright, so I couldn't decide whether to go character by character or episode by episode. So I'm gonna be a little bisexual and do both at the same time, since Gooseworx has said that every character basically has their own episode. So episode 1 would be
Pomni.
Pomni!
Pomni.
Pomni!
Pomni.
Pomni!
We'll start with the main character of the show. Pomni is the first character that we actually see enter the circus. She only joins after the theme song in episode 1. Immediately, she starts freaking out and tries to leave, and keeps desperately trying to find an exit door throughout the entire episode. Keep in mind, she's trying to leave immediately after joining. I think that Pomni represents the young adults under capitalism who, throughout their childhood, were naive enough to think that school was the worst thing on earth, and that once they graduated, they would finally be free to do whatever they wanted. But now that they've entered the adult world, they realize that they'll be forced to work a job for the next 40 to 50 or so years, as represented by Pomni running through an endless loop of exit doors. And in the show, the circus has loads of vibrant colors to give the illusion of an enjoyable world, even though all the people living in it are absolutely miserable all the time. And the episode ends with the humans eating food together, where the song Your New Home plays, and Pomni realizes that she is stuck in a prison forever with no way out. Just like a young adult's moment of realization that, yup, this is their life now, whether they like it or not, and there's nothing they can do to get out of it.
Alright, Pomni, let's bring this hootenanny home with a classic duet!
Gummigoo? This episode is about Pomni again, as well as Gummigoo. Gummigoo and his brothers are first introduced to us as rotten bandits, which already makes us assume that they are the bad guys. But then Gummigoo and Pomni fall off the map, and the former discovers that his entire life has been a lie. He is just an NPC, and so are all the people that he's ever known, or at least thought he'd known. Then he has an existential crisis. I think that Gummigoo represents the members of the working class and class consciousness. Quick side note, this is why left-wing reformers are often called woke, because they've woken up and realized the injustices of the modern world. But for some reason, conservatives use it as a buzzword and an insult. Anyway, Gummigoo reflects how woke people realize that everything they've ever done in life is to essentially turn them into a cog in the machine that makes the capitalist society function. They realize just how insignificant they are, and how everything they do won't matter in the end. Pomni even says in the show that
feeling like you're nothing is kinda normal. I mean, people even feel like that in the world I came from.
So then Pomni tries to relate to Gummigoo, and even invites him to go back to the circus. But then...
So this is the circus, huh? I could get used to this.
Oh, looks like one of these guys made it through!
Wait, what?
Yeah, so what did we just see? Someone who gained consciousness, who's aware of the world around them, and got killed by someone in power, and the reasoning being that
I know you guys love your NPCs, but if I start losing track of who's a human and who's an NPC, who knows what could happen?
Caine never elaborates on this, by the way. He just kinda assumes they'd know. This is a representation of how the super rich billionaires don't actually care about the lives of the commoners. All they care about is keeping things the way they are, so that they keep their power. It's why the upper class oppresses people who know too much by arresting them, or at worst, killing them, in fear that if too many people know the truth, like say, if there were too many NPCs who become conscious running around the circus, they would all team up and revolt against the people in power, because they'll finally realize who the true enemy is. Now on to episode 3. The episode starts off with the humans trying to hold their breath, and I feel like this is eerily similar to society's attitudes towards people who want to rebel against capitalism.
Try not thinking about it. Or you could toughen up.
Then the humans go on an adventure as per usual, except for Zooble, who refuses. So Caine asks Zooble why they don't want to. Now I see Zooble as the type of person who's just tired of life and straight up rejects the idea of even conforming to societal norms. And one major reason is that they just can't be bothered to tolerate Caine's adventures on top of their own personal issues of body dysmorphia. Also, Caine isn't actually listening throughout the whole session.
Zooble, look at this cool bee I drew!
In this scene, Caine represents the people in power, specifically the government. The reason why top-down approaches aren't as effective at solving a problem is that the government doesn't actually care what the people who are affected want. They do, what the government wants. However, bottom-up approaches, those done by the local community, usually don't get enough money or power to be effective either. Capitalism is a system designed to keep the upper class in power while making sure that the working class doesn't gain power. This therapy scene directly exposes this. Zooble's problem doesn't get solved, because Caine ignores what Zooble actually wants. He only cares about making them go on his adventures. Meanwhile, Zooble's approach doesn't work either because they don't have the power to do anything to fix the problem. And then this scene explains it all.
Caine, nobody likes your stupid adventures.
Oh, Zooble, making adventures is my art! It's all I exist to do, all I'm good at. And, what you're saying could imply that I'm bad at the only thing I'm good at, and that... that'd be...
The whole circus starts crumbling. Caine doesn't want to accept what Zooble is saying, because that means that the fundamental values that he's been built on would be destroyed. If the workers all gain class consciousness and realize that capitalism doesn't do them any good, then the whole system will crumble and the upper class will lose their purpose. Not that they had a purpose to begin with. Anyway, before this section ends, let's have a Kinger quote.
In this world, the worst thing you can do is make someone think they're not wanted or loved.
I'm not gonna analyze this just yet, since I think it fits better in another section. But keep this quote in mind. It'll be important later.
How's it feel?
It feels normal.
Episode 4 is literally just the humans working a minimum wage job at a fast food restaurant. Do I even have to say anything about that? When Zooble says,
I'm not gonna be a wage slave for fun.
they clearly state that they don't want to work the job. And what does Caine, the one in power, do?
You can shut up now!
In fact, not having autonomy is a big theme in the show. Like, you'd think that living in a video game world, going on fun adventures once in a while wouldn't be that bad, but being forced to go on adventures, especially ones that you don't even like, that's just straight up torture. But Caine keeps forcing it onto everyone, and basically drills into their heads the idea that adventures are just a simple part of everyday life, even though none of them actually want to go on them. Huh. Sure sounds oddly familiar, doesn't it? Anyway, in this adventure, Gangle becomes the manager and Jax does this.
Oh no! It looks like I've taken Ragatha and dropped her in the deep fryer.
This is another example of people in power ignoring what the people they're in charge of actually want. and only focusing on keeping the status quo. Gangle basically tells Caine that employees should be punished for bad behavior at the end of the day. Then she proceeds to tell Jax to get back to work. Is that really more important than, oh, I don't know, a whole person being put into the deep fryer? And she just kind of leaves Ragatha in the deep fryer and then just walks off? This scene is almost a whole minute long, by the way. However, Gangle isn't entirely a terrible boss. At the end of the episode,
Now, being in a position of power like this, you could offload the blame to one of your employees and avoid the dock on your score.
you can clearly see how the differences in power can be abused. And Caine, being the ultimate one in power, thinks it is perfectly normal to make your own life better by making other people's lives worse. But surprisingly, Gangle takes responsibility. Unlike most bosses under capitalism, where profit is the driving force of literally everything, and where greed is rewarded.
The only thing holding Caine back is the fact that he likes us.
The only thing holding the upper class back is the fact that they need us, the working class, to gain more power.
Have you heard of Jax? He is quite a scam. When it comes to mischief, death, and violence, he's the jam.
Surprisingly, there's not actually that much to talk about for episode 5, even though there's a lot of content and it's all over the place. I'll just be repeating myself at this point. Caine is unhappy that he doesn't get to decide what the humans do. I mean, I guess I could say that the rapid changes in adventures represents the constant switching between governments in countries like the USA and the UK, leading to nobody being satisfied in the end. Well, there is one thing, but it's more of an issue throughout the whole series rather than just episode 5, which is that Jax is a jerk. Okay, I know that sounds kind of obvious, but stay with me here. In episode 6, Jax says,
I do not care about you or anyone else in this circus in the slightest. End of story. You are my playthings, and I get joy out of making you suffer. I'm the one who causes pain for fun. If I led you on, it was just to make this part hurt you more.
I don't know if this is a hot take or not, but I feel like Jax is more of a villain than Caine. Like, most of Caine's adventures aren't actually completely bad. Yeah, there's still a problem of not being able to just opt out of the adventures, but with Jax being there, it just makes everyone's experiences miserable. Like, we see him constantly bullying the others for no reason, other than the fact that he thinks it's funny. Also in episode 5, Pomni and Zooble say that they like the low-stakes adventures. But you know who doesn't? Jax. His goals and interests are always against the other circus members, which in real life further feeds into the capitalist system. Imagine for a second that you're the upper class. You have a lot of power, much more than the commoners. But what the people have are numbers. If the masses are united, then they can easily revolt and take you off your throne. So what's the solution? Create conflict among them, so that they don't unite, obviously. This is why politicians make such a big deal out of problems that really just do not matter, and especially target minorities, because most people who are unaffected generally aren't knowledgeable enough to understand them, so just believe whatever they are told. This is why there are things like racism, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, ableism, etc. This is especially effective, as by turning the population against each other, it makes people think that the targeted groups are the enemies, and so they get distracted from the real problem, the oppressive upper class. But what happens when the masses are united? Well, wouldn't you know, episode 7 has just that.
I think I found the way to leave.
So, who is Abel? He's an NPC designed by Caine who claims to be a human who has found the exit. Everyone believes him except Jax, who is slightly skeptical, but the others ignore him. I think that Abel represents politicians appointed by the government who claim that they are a man of the people, meaning that they have the same desires and struggles as everyone else. They say they can fix everything, and then use propaganda to convince everyone that their policies will definitely lead to a better life for everyone. But in the end, nothing actually changes. And in fact, they are worse off than before. Jax here represents those who have grown skeptical of the government due to their repeated failures. Then the conservative people call him stupid and woke and follow suit. And in the end,
Congratulations, my little cattywampus cucumbers!
I was right? I can't believe I was right!
Jax was right all along. And do they all say, "Sorry, Jax, we should have trusted you"? No, what they do is blame Jax, because in their mind, he pressed the blue button. So if it were real, they would have been trapped because of him. Leftists are skeptical of the current status quo, and don't believe in or support politicians. And when the politicians fail, yeah, it was the radical left's fault. Oh, and by the way, remind me why Jax pressed the blue button? Because Caine, the government, put images of what would happen if they were to leave into his brain. That is blatantly a reference to how capitalists unironically say, well, under communism, there's a dictatorship, there's gonna be no food, and, the whole world's gonna crumble, so you better stick with good old capitalism to draw people away from communism. There's no way you can argue otherwise. It's literally a representation of real-life propaganda and indoctrination. The capitalists in the government have convinced the whole world that capitalism is good, communism is bad, because, there's no food. Now ask yourself the question, what do the circus members actually want? What would satisfy them? To leave the circus. But Caine doesn't want them to do that. So he straight up forces them to think that the circus is actually good, and they should all stay. But unlike in real life, the players actually have a brain, and they realize that, hey, maybe the system is the problem. And so, they try to revolt again.
Let's get this show on the road!
In this episode, Caine realizes that, aw, crap, the players actually hate me. So, what does he do that's like an oppressive government? Abuse his power even more to force the players into complying. Then he sings a song. And this song is what inspired me to make this video as a whole. Specifically this line.
Why bite the hand that feeds when it's the only hand you're getting?
This is exactly the argument that capitalists use. They argue that, well, you should be thankful because capitalism is what builds up the modern day world. Like your house, the food you eat, even your phone. What they don't realize is that that's exactly the problem. People don't have a choice to not use it, and then they get told that they should be thankful that they're even getting anything that they're being forced to use. But at this point, I do want to say something really important. I don't think Caine is pure evil. He does like the humans and want them to be happy. During his mental breakdown, he thinks of the problem as
a big puzzle that I need to solve.
He genuinely wants to make adventures that the humans enjoy, but he just can't, because they don't want to go on adventures. I do genuinely sympathize for Caine here. Remember that Kinger quote? Yeah, Caine is doing all this because he wants to feel important, not because he wants to see others suffer, like the bourgeoisie do in real life. However, at the end of the episode, the players successfully delete Caine. The circus, representing the capitalist system, loses its colors and breaks down. Now, the 6 humans live in an anarchy system where everyone is equal.
Now, we have nothing.
But at this point, you might be thinking, I've only been talking about how the circus represents capitalism, so how is it about communism as well? Well, at the start of episode 9, everyone is initially scared and feels hopeless, thinking that it can't get better because everyone's powerless to do anything. And that's normal. Transition periods are usually painful. That's why they have to endure the pain until it gets better. They slowly learn how to do things like conjuring and, spoiler alert, calming down the abstracted Jax. The circus gradually regains its colors as society is rebuilt under communism. They built a massive fortress for Jax to stay inside, and they all manage their feelings. And spoiler alert again, the resolution is that Caine comes back and apologizes. Unlike the people in power in real life, Caine gives up all his power willingly. The means of production now belong to the people. And I just want to say really quickly, imagine an AI. who's specifically not human, not being able to understand emotions the same way humans can, having more humanity than people in control of the world today, really says a lot about society, doesn't it? And do they succeed in becoming happy in the end? Absolutely. The ending shows Caine actually listening to the humans' ideas. So now everyone has the freedom to do what they want. Everyone gets to commemorate the abstracted circus members. Caine gets the love that he's always wanted. Gangle gets to draw all she wants, and even shows it to Caine. Ragatha gets a new supportive mom, the Gloink Queen. Kinger gets to be with his wife again, sort of. Zooble gets to work as a bartender, and Pomni gets to feel at home at the circus. All of their wants are met. The show ends with the 5 humans and Caine going on adventures together as equals, and they are all genuinely happy together.